welcome to the BuenaVista YouTube channel. Today we'll be going over our plan to build a super microcomputer. It's not a computer, it's a server, you moron! Today, I'll describe and demonstrate how we plan to create and partition a super micro server into 3 virtual machines. As you can see, they're called super micro servers because they're roughly the size of a human hand. We chose to make this server because we wanted a security appliance added onto our network. The super micro chassis was needed because we had little to no space for a larger than bite-sized machine. Stay tuned for the end of the video to see what we plan to do with each of the 3 VMs. First and foremost, I'll go over the build components, much like we did in our Plex videos. Introducing 16 gigs of DDR3 Kingpin RAM. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, 16 isn't enough. And you're right. That's why we actually have 32 gigabytes of RAM. These bad boys will be able to evenly distribute memory into each of the 3 virtual machines. So next up we have what are you doing? Get out of here. Next up we have the Intel Xeon E3 1225V5. This processor has a clock speed of 3.3 GHz and a pass mark score of 5917. And with 4 cores available, we should have enough processing power for each of the VMs. For our operating system, we're using the same solid-state drive as we did in our Plex server. A 240 GB EasyStore SSD from the easiest store in the world, And finally, the storage for our VMs. We went with 3 500 GB Seagate HDDs. We chose the 2.5-inch form factor ones because of the limited room in a super micro server. Okay, so now we're going to open up this micro server. There are 4 screws you need to take out. 2 at the center of the top and 2 on the back above the input-output panel. Contrary to popular belief, the seagull is a vicious predator capable of executing small mammals at the speed similar to that of the Large Hadron Collider. And once the screws are out, you could just slide the top panel towards the back. The innards have been revealed. Let us feast. Here's how it looks on the inside. We have our CPU socket, our SATA cables and power cords, our RAM slots, and the first victim to be bound by the machine is the RAM. Just like I showed in our Plex videos, all you need to do is fit the pins on the RAM stick onto the RAM slot and press down evenly with 2 fingers until the clips lock in. Oh, is this thing still on? Now for the CPU installation. All it takes is a gentle placement in the correct orientation. This is marked by an arrow at the corner of the CPU socket. And make sure not to bend the pins. There should be no rubbing or shimmying of any kind, just a simple placement. Naturally, after installing the CPU, we have to add thermal compound, but unlike before, we'll be using the X method instead of the P-drop method. And right there is all you really need. This will allow the thermal paste to evenly spread across the CPU in order to maximize heat transfer efficiency. And it turns out that the heatsink that came with the server already had thermal paste, so we had to clean it up in order to prevent insulating and overheating the CPU. With the heatsink cleaned, we can now mount it on the CPU. Be sure to align the crevices so that they face the fans, otherwise you would not have proper airflow. Mount the heatsink on the 4 screw holes surrounding the CPU, then evenly tighten. Mounting the SSD was a bit difficult since the server has very little space for drives, so we decided to mount it on the case using the threaded inserts on the bottom of the server. Once it was nice and secured, we plugged in the SATA cable and the power. And finally, a poorly filmed, stereotypical YouTuber pan shot, just for you. You can put the cover back on by placing it on top, straight and forward, and then sliding it back in. Then we sealed her up with the screws and we were ready to test to see how she sounded. She may be tiny, but she's a fighter. She's angry. As you can see, she's pretty loud, but it's not horrible. I gotta say, we're very excited to see how these VMs run. We'll be installing Pi-hole on one, a logging database on the other, and the final one will be used as a test environment. Be sure to stay tuned for videos on how we actually install these VMs. If you watched this far through the video, then be sure to like and subscribe. If you didn't, then be sure to like and subscribe. If you'd like to see more, then be sure to like and subscribe. If you're a human being, then be sure to like and subscribe. CPU installed. Can you believe that? Let's get some thermal paste. That's all you need, right there. Well, there's so much thermal paste, and if we added it onto that, we would have found ourselves in quite the mess. Cut!